hello to our council member, Marta Dassù, who is joining us from Rome. Marta is a member of the Wise Men and Women group who drafted the report about NATO's future in the until 2030. And I am really very grateful to her that she agreed to do this short interview for ECFR. We know that this report is the result of a lot of work. And you even mentioned that you had 90 online meetings. I know this from a piece you wrote for ECFR, and we're very grateful for that as well, because it summarizes your work very well. The group presented the report on the 1st of December, and the foreign ministers discussed it actually at great length, as I understand. Can we maybe take a step back? We have been talking about differences in threat perceptions on both sides of the Atlantic. How was it in your group? What kind of security environment you appreciated as a starting point?
Thanks to you, Vessela, for this invitation. It's always a pleasure to be with the European Council on Foreign Relations. You recalled just a minute ago that we had 90 video conferences, and that was a real work in a sense. We never met in person, but we were able to write this final report on NATO 2030 United for a New Era. So the idea is that one of the major strengths of NATO traditionally has been the ability to adapt to a changing external environment. And so the fundamental idea behind the report is that NATO has to open up a new chapter in this constant adaptation, precisely because the strategic environment is different as compared to 10 years ago. NATO has a strategic concept that was written, as we all know, in 2010, the Madeleine Albright group. Now we think, and this is one of the first recommendations of our report, that we need to have an updated strategic concept, since the old one is still valid in part, but we have new trends. Which ones? The first one, according to the report, is that we are entering a new era of great power competition. We had some quarrels among us. One of the idea was to write the return of geopolitics. My objection was that geopolitics never went away, in a sense. So we were more precise. Great power competition, in particular, the report has a big focus on China as the emerging systemic rival, even if the main point in the report is that Russia is there to stay as the main threat for the Euro-Atlantic, for the security of the Euro-Atlantic region in the next 10 years. But in any case, the return of great power competition on the one hand, and on the other, increasing transnational risks from pandemic to climate change and the likes. And so we say it is an era of strategic simultaneity that compels NATO to remain an efficient military alliance in the conventional sense, but also to enter the field of democratic resilience.
You also talk about China in a similar fashion as Commission's President von der Leyen. You call it systemic rival. What is that really NATO can do about China and about that rivalry?
The main point we make is that to avoid a sort of decoupling in risk assessment between the Europeans and the US, NATO has to become much more involved into assessing the China rising risk. So we suggest the need to create a sort of consultative body within NATO so as to have this wider assessment. Clearly, we do not suggest a global NATO. The point is that NATO will remain a regional alliance, and yet we suggest the need for a global awareness, to put it this way. We also deal a lot with technological issues. We think that preserving a tech edge will be vital for NATO, also as a military alliance. And so China and tech go together. And the idea is that NATO must open up a real unit, if you wish, or something like that, to be able to tackle with technological issues, with security ramifications, organizing a permanent channel of cooperation between governments and the private sector. And so it's, I would say that as far as China is concerned, a major effort is on the technological side, together with reinforcing partnerships in East Asia, in the Pacific, the Indo-Pacific partners, especially Japan, South Korea, Australia, and possibly, we say, India.
When you talk about digital and China, you also mention that the whole cybersecurity issue within the context of resilience. In the report, you mentioned the question how resilient our democracies are. That, of course, entails other elements like obviously climate, the way we deal with the authoritarian regimes, but also the way we deal with pandemics and external shocks. How much of that is really in NATO's scope?
We tend to say that clearly this is not a NATO responsibility only, and it is not the major field, if you wish, in which NATO operates. But then there are two major motivations why NATO must enter the field of, quote unquote, human security in a larger sense. The first one is that the conventional threats combine with these new forms of interference in our societies through cyber means, through a set of different means. So to be able to confront conventional challenges, we also need to enter these new fields. Also, I think that it would be vital for NATO to continue to have public support, and public support to military budgets, especially, to be able to show that we are making a difference in the field of human security. So these are the two major motivations why we think that NATO, while preserving its essential function of a military and defensive alliance, must also play a role in these additional areas, if you wish. And the logistic support that NATO has been exercises in front of COVID-19 is a first step in this direction. Clearly, a new balance will be to be established, to be found between the core functions and the additional ones.
There is one very interesting element, and this is maybe my last question. You mentioned something you call code of good conduct among members of NATO. Can you maybe elaborate a bit on that? Because I think this is also vital vis-a-vis NATO-EU relations.
Yes, clearly there is a problem in general in the Western world on the fragility, if you wish, of our societies. We see this fragility in each of our countries, if you wish, including our major ally, the United States. Even if in the end the check and balances system has been working, and in the end, the transition has started. But in any case, the defense of democracy has become a major point of engagement. This is also valid for NATO. The idea is that the NATO allies must confirm the value foundations of the transatlantic alliance. So the code of conduct implies a restatement, if you wish, of the fundamental values and principles that are at the foundations of the Washington Treaty, but not only. Clearly, there are a set of consequential actions, including, for instance, the invitation, the suggestions that each ally has to notify to the North Atlantic Council decisions in the security field which could have an impact on the collective security of the rest of the alliance. It was difficult to discuss these kind of issues. You can imagine that. Turkey, in a sense, was there, but not there. There are clear sensitivities. There is a potential clash between our interests and our values on that front. But in any case, the problem of democracy promotion was dealt with in a way that I think could contribute to the renewal of the Atlantic Alliance. The general inspiration behind is that NATO must really become a sort of forum of first resort for political consultation between all the members. The idea is that while NATO as a military alliance performs very well, and it has been able to adapt since 2014, the same is not exactly true for the political leg of the alliance. And the idea is that NATO must reinforce its role really as a political alliance between the Western countries.
Obviously a very big task, but thank you very much for charting this out and also for taking the time for this interview.
Thanks to you, and a great encouragement to your conference today.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Have great holidays as well.
Okay, thank you. Stay in touch.
Bye.